Motivating sheep. Perhaps the greatest truth about human nature that you do not find in the typical economics textbook is that people are sheep. Most human beings don't like to be different from the others around them. They want to fit in, to look, sound, and act normal. Perhaps the best discussion of this is in Gaetano Mosca's The Ruling Class. The urge to be normal is most obvious in K-12 education, when conforming to changing fashions becomes a full-time job. But adults are basically the same, just a little more subtle. How much would you have to pay typical adults to wear shorts at a formal gathering of people they are sure to never meet again? How much would you have to pay the typical man to wear a dress? But if people are sheep, doesn't it undercut a great deal of economics? Economists are always arguing that you can change behavior simply by changing prices. But if people are desperate not to be square pegs, they might lack the courage to switch to currently unusual behavior just because the pay is better. In fact, I'll warrant that if you pulled people at random out of a crowd and offered them decent money to do something weird, most wouldn't do it. That's precisely what an interesting paper in Public Choice by Werner Guth and Hannelore Vec Hahnemann found. They gave randomly selected students a chance to sell their vote for a fair bit of money. And even though many of those students didn't vote, very few were willing to publicly take the cash. It is not too difficult, however, to reconstruct economics on a sheepish foundation. All we need to realize is that there are degrees of sheepishness. In any society, 5 or 10% care primarily about money, not what other people think about them. Or perhaps they reason that once they're rich enough, people will think what they want them to think. When prices change, the money-focused people change their behavior. That makes changing behavior less weird, which makes slightly more sheepish people willing to change their behavior. And that reduces the stigma further, and so on. Unless the initial stigma is overwhelming, then it is easy to get big swings in behavior, even though most people are suckers for peer pressure. Thomas Neshiba's model of welfare and illegitimacy is a nice example. Who would have thought that paying unwed moms for out-of-wedlock births would have led to a lot more of them? Was AFDC really such an attractive deal, considering all the social disapproval unwed moms still faced? The weakness in this argument is that some women were swayed by money, which reduced the stigma, leading more potential moms to change their behavior. And off we go. Economics should recognize that people are sheep because it's true. But I believe it would also improve economic pedagogy. When economists explain the effects of rent control, for example, it can sound a little paranoid. First, rent control, and before you know it, landlords are setting fire to their own buildings. A more plausible story is that rent control leads a few landlords to unscrupulous behavior, which makes it seem more normal. You get the idea. The lone collectivist. When you're a normal member of your society, the appeal of collectivism is easy to understand. Most people believe what you believe and enjoy what you enjoy. So wouldn't it be great if society as a whole continuously celebrated your worldview and lifestyle? When you fit in, walking on eggshells to spare minority sensibilities is most tiresome. If you're weird, in contrast, the appeal of individualism is easy to understand. Most people neither believe what you believe nor enjoy what you enjoy. You already feel isolated and alone. Public celebrations of popular values add insult to injury, especially when these celebrations are infused by the presumption that these are the values that we as a society hold in common. Strangely, though, weird people often hail collectivism and scoff at individualism. Marxists do it, Greens do it, and reactionaries do it. They're totally out of sync with their societies, but they nevertheless lament their society's lack of community spirit and common purpose. A country shouldn't just be a bunch of people living next to each other, is a typical lament. But weird collectivists rarely ask themselves, what would happen if I couldn't live next to anyone who didn't share my identity? The unwelcome answer, of course, is that Marxists, Greens, and reactionaries would have to recant or relocate. I'm tempted to say that this is just another mark against the claim that self-interest drives political views, but I sense more sinister motives. Namely, Weird collectivists have a three-step daydream. Seize power. Step 2. Use that power to tendentiously claim to speak for society. Step 3. Force their worldview lifestyle on their recalcitrant societies in society's name. Think of these 3 steps as the revolutionary version of society. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Perhaps this is overly negative. But what else could the lone collectivist be thinking? His true feelings about the community in which he resides must be, at best, mixed. In 1,000 ways, the lone collectivist's community keeps telling him, "You don't fit in." If he isn't fantasizing about a world where he can authoritatively speak in society's name, why else would the lone collectivist openly yearn for cohesive community? Stockholm Syndrome? January 27, 2015.